So one of the areas a lot of supporters of Western independence sometimes kind of mess things up. They can embrace a bit of xenophobia. They have a worry. I've heard a lot of that over the years. People saying it's just we can't get this going because so many newcomers just keep coming out to Alberta, Saskatchewan, wherever, and it's going to skew the vote. They bring their home values and loyalties here, which won't transfer to the new province, and it's going to cause a problem for the movement. That's not true whatsoever. We got to change that attitude. In fact, that attitude is what will make it harder to get that tipping point for a referendum win to make those numbers. I mean, so just to begin with, I did a couple of events through Rebel News in Edmonton and Calgary. They were packed, fantastic rooms. And in Edmonton, Sheila Gunn Reid asked a great question while we were up there on the panel and just did one of those straw polls with the audience and just said, how many people in this room were born in Alberta? Or actually, she asked, how many people came to Alberta from somewhere else? And at least half of the room raised their hands. And, this room, that's another issue we'll talk about in another video. For the most part, we're older Albertans, but they've been here a long time, but they had come from somewhere else, whether it was another country or another part of Canada. And now they are some of the most dedicated of independence advocates. They're coming out to the meetings. They're supporting the movement. Likewise, in Calgary, the event I did last night, I spoke to a few people after the event. And again, now, just to be blunt with things, the bulk of the room was white. But there were a handful of other individuals, and they came up after to talk to me, some folks from Asia, and they were relatively new Canadians, but not brand new. And they're concerned too. And they make up a large part, whether it's people from other parts of the country or from other countries altogether, they make up a large part of the population. Everybody's going to have the right to vote on that referendum. So let's listen to them and talk to them, because they're not as opposed to independence as a lot of people would assume or think. Now, to begin with, we've been hearing this since the 80s. Alberta, Saskatchewan, they're the frontier. They're the place where people move to make a new home for themselves. Alberta's population has grown in leaps and bounds over the last 40, 50 years. If it was to be believed that that would turn us liberal, we would have had a provincial liberal government a long time ago. You got to understand the kind of mindset of a person who's going to move somewhere else to make a future for themselves and their family. Seriously, that takes some courage, whether you're coming from Newfoundland or Asia or another part of Europe. This is a person willing to pick up, whether by themselves or with their family, leave their comfort zone, leave the area where they're, settled, and take a chance and move a long distance to try and make a future for themselves. You know what that is? That's not a liberal. That is a person of ambition. This is a person who's not going to wait for the world to hand them something. They're going to go out and try and get it for themselves. Now, there's two reasons why people who have done that will be receptive to independence. For one, most often, they've come from an area where ambition has been stunted, where it hasn't been valued, where they couldn't find a future for themselves moving forward. They understand the consequences of bad government more than a lot of people out west, where we've been, we've had our share of bad governments, even provincially, but not to the degree of people, again, whether it's in Quebec or Ontario or in England or in India for that matter. And often they're business people. These are self-starters. They're going to come out. They're going to start stores. They're going to start construction companies, you name it. And they're getting taxed as badly as everybody else. They're getting regulated to death. And they're upset. They're fearful. You got to think of that. Boy, I made that leap. I came all the way over here. I started up, and now I'm seeing the same ugly socialism, authoritarianism, all of that stuff I escaped, and now it's creeping in over here, and my kids aren't going to have a future over here as well. They want to prevent that as much as anybody. But we need to reach out to them. The last thing you need to do is have some people come out and then see people standing up screaming at a town hall meeting saying every new person coming to Alberta is going to hold up this movement and they're terrible. We got to stop this. Now, I understand the concerns that we have in Canada with unchecked immigration. That's another issue altogether. The mass immigration, that's a huge problem. And it's caused community ghettoization. It's caused the housing crisis. It's pressured the healthcare systems. That's a separate issue altogether. But controlled immigration can be quite good. I mean, when you target it and manage it correctly. The other thing is a lot of the connection to the Federation that people hold today, the ones who are going to vote to stay no matter how badly Ottawa abuses the West, those are people with an emotional tie to the Federation. And emotional ties are real. We got to work on that. That's fodder for yet another video on how we deal with that. Because it doesn't matter what the tie was, whether it's coldly financial or political or emotional. If it leads to a no vote in a referendum, it leads to a no vote, and we have to address that. But people who have moved out here from another country don't feel that strong tie to the Maple Leaf and Tim Hortons. They just want to make the best future they can for themselves and their family. So that emotional aspect, I mean, that's the reality. All we're looking to do is change a contract. You know, the border is still going to be there. The rest of the country is still going to be there, but the agreement is going to be different. And somebody who doesn't feel some sort of patriotic tie to Canada, or wasn't born and raised in other parts of Canada, isn't going to feel as bound by that aspect of things. But it's going to take some time. It's going to take some outreach. I mean, the first part is we've got to be careful about is not alienating and insulting people at these meetings or one-on-one and in other areas. I mean, we do have people coming in from the East that do change some of the voting patterns, and we do have people coming from other countries to a degree. But for the most part, that's the nice thing of being the place that people want to go to, the people of ambition, the people who want to go to the frontier. For the most part, we're bringing in good, new, individualist conservatives. But we have to speak to them. And part of the problem, and that's a language thing, that's a community thing, is they can become introverted. And they can get communications, unfortunately, only from, say, some community leaders who often are entrenched into the system out here already and doing quite well on cultural grants and things such as that. And they don't want to shake the status quo. It's similar, actually, to the Indigenous communities, too, who we must reach out to, which is very important. But it's hard to speak directly to the members of the Indigenous communities because the chiefs and bureaucrats and lawyers want to make sure that the commoners remain down in the dumps in the reserve and keep all of those often corrupted chiefs standing in the front and center, speaking allegedly on the behalf of the citizens there. So tight in, immigrant communities and other communities are going to be harder to get to, but we have to reach out to them. We have to bring them in. We have to make them feel welcome. They're Albertans. They're here. They're contributing, and they want to contribute more. They're like anybody else. And that's the issue we've got, right? The future looks bleak. It looks like crap. We've got a new prime minister, the brilliant economist, who can't even come up with a budget in a year. We aren't even getting a budget. Guys, we've got an economic freight train about to crash into us. Businesses, individuals, we are up the creek. We got young people who have given up all hope of owning a home. We got people mired in debt. We still got inflation going on. And then the federal debt is out of control. People are married to the Canada pension plan, even though, again, the numbers aren't adding up. We're over-contributing and underdrawing. New Albertans, new Saskatchewan citizens, they see this too. They know it too. So we've got to change our mindset a little bit. A lot of the issue we've got going on too is we are seeing a bit more of a swing to the left in a lot of areas, but that's not due to an influx of new people out here. That's more of an urban-rural split, and that's something that's happening everywhere. It tends to be more conservative in the rural areas, and it tends to be leaning left when you get into the urban areas, and the urban populations are dominating the rural ones. That's part of why you look at Calgary's got some of the wackiest loony left municipal politicians on earth, yet federally they're almost uniformly conservative. It's an urban-rural thing. It's not from new people coming here. Let's keep in mind some of the people born in Alberta and raised here. Rachel Notley, Naheed Nenshi, Jan Arden. There's no assurance that somebody born in the West is going to be an independent supporter or a good conservative. In fact, a lot of them were quite spoiled. They got to be born into the land of opportunity out here, the land that respects freedoms, and they can be prone to taking it for granted. We can learn from the other people coming out here. We've got a big task, and it's looking great. I mean, the appetite is there. We're going to see a referendum within a year, but boy, we've got a lot of ground to cover to creep up from that 36% to getting, comfortably beyond 50% to reach that independence bar we must meet. And when we've got a population where a large bulk of Alberta was not born in Alberta, then the worst thing we could do is alienate that vote. We need that vote. We need their participation. So think on those things, let's make this movement big and broad. Let's not split ourselves from within. We were talking about, internal division and splitting parties and things like that, and movements and groups, and that's a problem as well. But as well, just splitting ourselves as populations. If we start taking large segments of our population and giving them the middle finger, we are not winning a referendum. We are not becoming independent. So bear that in mind. Reach out to the people, because a lot of them are on the fence. They just aren't sure. They haven't been here that long. They're still getting it settled, but they're concerned and they're receptive. But you're only receptive if somebody is genuinely speaking to you and being polite and reaching out and finding out your concerns and addressing them, because the new Albertans will prosper under an independent Alberta just as the rest of us will, and we need their support. So keep that in mind as you get out there. And again, I'll leave off with one more quick plug. That is, among other things, in the Sovereigntist Handbook, your guide charting that path to get to Western independence. It's available on Amazon. The link is in the video description here. I'll cover everything that's in that book in these videos. So if you don't want to buy the book, that's absolutely fine, of course. But that's one spot where it's all in one place, and I've put it together. I'll probably put an updated version of it too, eventually, as I'm learning more at these meetings and hearing back from others. So I'll leave off with the usual, subscribe, like, and leave comments if there's things I'm missing. If there's more things you want to hear about, I'm going to keep doing this video series. We're going to get there. Tell me what you want to hear about next, and I'm certain I'll make one and address it soon. These rallies were fantastic this week. There's more coming. We're going to do this, folks.